Magandang araw po sa ating lahat. Isa na namang malayang talakayan ang magaganap ngayong araw na ito sa Tapatan sa Aristocrat. Maraming lumabas na mga balita mula pa nung nakalipas na Enero matapos maganap ang madugong pangyayari sa Mamasapano sa Maguindanao na ikinasawi ng 44 na miyembro ng Special Action Force, 18 mga MILF at 5 sibilyan. Ayon po yan kay Chair EDSA Rosales ng CHR. Nasundan ito ng magkakataliwas na pahayag ng ilang mga newsmaker mula kay Pangulong Aquino, sa suspendidong PNP Chief Director General Alan Purisima at kay SAF Director Hitulio na Peñas at iba pa. Lubhang nahalo po ang kalamay na magpatawag ng investigasyon ng Senado at meron na naman ngayon. Nasundan pa ito ng peryahan sa House of Representatives. Dahilan sa umepal yung ilang mga kongresista na hindi naman naghanda ng itatanong. So, lumabas na iilan, mabibilang mo sa 5 daliri yung nakapagtanong ng maayos. Sino bang may pananagutan sa pagdanak ng dugo sa Central Mindanao? May mga panawagang magbitiw na si Pangulong Aquino, may nagsasabing may nakaambang coup, at isa raw sa characters ko paniniwalaan si Senador Trillanes, itong katabi ko rito. Bakit ba may mga panawagang magbitiw si Pangulong Aquino? Sa Miyerkules, idaraos po ang ika-29 na anibersaryo ng EDSA People Power. Namayapa na sina Tita Cory at Tito Doy, may their souls rest in peace, but they lived in a house divided until 1992. However, some people say that at the very start, si Pangulong Pinoy started with a house divided. Yung mga Balay Boys at yung Samar Boys. The good news is, according to some sources, Balay and Samar groups decided to bury the hatchet. That's the good news. The bad news is, they decided to bury the hatchet on each other's back. Okay, so that's the problem. EDSA, kalsada na lang ba o parking lot na? Saan makararating ang mga pangyayaring ito? Ang sabi ng mga Chino, may you live in interesting times. Katatapos lang ng Chinese New Year. Nagkataon nga lamang, ang ganitong pagbati is more of a curse than a blessing. Narito po ang ating mga panauhin. Secretary Bert Gonzales, Defense Secretary from 2007, 2009 until 2010. Si Secretary Ronaldo Llamas, Political Advisor to President Benigno, Simeon, si Aquino III. Narito rin po si Ginoong Teddy Casiño, tagapagsalita ng Bayan. We will ask them of their opening statements. Let's start with the political advisor. What's going on in Malacanang? What's happening?
Well, maraming salamat, Melo. Tuloy yung trabaho, no? Sa Malacanang. Pagkamat ginagawa nila ng Malacanang yung trabaho niya sa gitna ng ito nga, tawag ng iba, isang krisis. No? Pero wala namang napag-uusapan sa Malacanang na itong mga developments na ito ay makaka-create ng isang naiibang sitwasyon para magkaroon ng rupture. O ibig sabihin, magkaroon ng pagbabago sa gobyerno. Lalong-lalo na a few months from now, magkakaroon na ng eleksyon. No? Kaya, yes, appreciated namin na maraming nangyayari ngayon, maraming mga batikos, more than at any other time. Pero sa tingin namin, lalo na si Presidente Aquino, ay tuloy lang yung mga programang nagawa niya habang sinusubukang mag-respond dito sa mga pangyayaring ito. At sa ngayon, hinihintay nga natin yung report ng BOI, hinihintay din natin yung report ng DOJ, at hinihintay din natin itong mga hearings na nagaganap, katulad ng Senate hearing today. At tingin ko habang tayo ay naghaharapan dito, ay dinadaos na rin sa Senado. Siguro baka mas madagdagan, if not makumpleto, yung mga impormasyon natin after nitong mga investigasyon na ito. No? Hopefully. No? Pero gusto ko ring sabihin na natutuwa ako na nakapunta rito dahil yung dalawang matagal ko lang hindi nakikita ng mga kasama, si Secretary Gonzales at saka si Teddy Casiño ay nandito ngayon. Ito yung first at sana hindi last time na magkasama-sama kami sa isang lamesa.
Maraming salamat po. Kasama ko rin si Sky Ortigas, aking co-host.
Reunion pala tayo.
Reunion ngayon. Reunion mode. Kaya pagdating ni Senator Tatad,
Mas
di
reunion
mas
pa.
masaya.
Oh.
Okay. Secretary Gonzales, for your opening salvo, opening statement muna bago yung salvo. Ano ba nangyayari ngayon?
Ang gusto ko sana, quiet retirement eh. Alam mo kami mga 68-year-old, ang gusto namin pakapi-kapi na lang eh.
Magkakapital.
At saka kwentuhang hindi totoo. Yun sana maganda dyan eh. Pero ngayon, medyo nasusubo yata tayo eh. Ito kasing kaibigan natin, dapat galing-galingan pa ng konti para maayos ang takbo ng ating pamahalaan, di ba? Para hindi na kailangang lumabas sa retirement yung mga katulad namin. Kasi, di pa rin siya, inaccuse pa ako na magkukudita. No? Yun eh. Sabi, kilala mo naman yun. Ang masasabi ko lang diyan kasi, alam mo, nasa pwesto pa ako. Ito ay alam ng mga ilan sa kabinete ng ating Pangulo ngayon, na isa sa mga talagang lagi kong sinasabi sa armed forces nung kapanahon na namin, na huwag kayong sasali sa kudita. Dahil kung titingnan natin ang kasaysayan dito sa atin, yung mga recent history, walang kudita na nagtagumpay eh. Di ba? Dapat yan na pinag-aaralang mabuti.
Kahit yung nagkakusa sa'yo.
Ay, kaya nga eh. Sabi niya, yan si Secretary Gonzales, nangiiwan ng kasama yan. Eh, sabi ko nga, ay siguro nasasaktan si Senator Trillanes kasi iniwanan siya eh. Yung isang kodita niya, yung nangako ng masa, hindi dumating eh. Kaya hindi
Bigyan mo kami ng clue sino yun nangako sa kanya.
Popular na popular ngayon.
Popular.
Paborito sa Senado.
Okay.
Okay. Palagay ko mas maganda magtanungan na lang tayo mamaya, ha?
Okay. Teddy, you're a street parliamentarian. You were once a member of the House of Representatives. From your point of view, what's happening mula sa bayan?
Well, para sa amin sa bayan, it is not business as usual. Ano? Kung ang tingin ni Secretary Llamas at ng Malacanang na parang ordinaryo lang, may mga batikos na and then they will just go on their usual ways. Tingin namin, and I think I speak for many fellow Filipinos, these are very trying times for us dahil nga itong trigger ng Mama Sapano incident, nagbukas ito ng napakarami pang ibang usapin. No? Not just about the deaths of the 44 SAF or the 18 MILF, iba pang civilian, pero put into question ngayon the competence of the President as the leader of the land, put into question yung kanyang patakaran, hindi lang sa peace process, kundi sa marami pang issues. No? At sa marami ng pulong na napupuntahan ko ng iba't ibang mga grupo, nauungkat lahat, no? Mula dito sa yung Luneta hostage taking, yung sa Zamboanga, yung Typhoon Yolanda, of course yung PDAF at yung DAP. So all these failures of leadership parang lumilinaw sa marami nating kababayan na kailangan na talagang baguhin ang liderato. No? Kaya hindi nakapagtataka na itong mga panawagan, kaliwat kanan, na si Pangulong Aquino ay magbitiw, ay talagang lumalaganap. No? At I think it's gaining traction on the ground. At nakita nga natin, sa panahon ngayon ng EDSA anniversary, maraming mga grupong nagtatangka na may gawin tungkol dito sa panawagang ito. So we take that seriously. And para sa amin naman, gusto namin kuning oportunidad ito na baka sakali magkaroon ng tunay na pagbabago. Kapag natanggal sa pwesto si Pangulong Aquino, napalitan ng isang bagong gobyerno na we hope will follow the interests of the nation. So, yan ang mga usap-usapan ngayon sa iba't ibang mga people's organizations, NGOs, mga concerned individuals. So, it's very, baga, we live in very interesting times.
Really? Pero sa ganitong pagkakataon, Teddy, ang tingin ng ilan sa grupo katulad ng Bayan, kahit sino raw naman nasa pwesto, hindi kayo sumasang-ayon eh. Bakit daw po ganon?
Kasi hindi naman yung taong nasa pwesto ang sasang-ayunan mo, hindi eh. It's really the system that they represent. No? So kahit sino ilagay mo dyan, kung nandyan ang political dynasties, kung nandyan ang pork barrel, kung ang eleksyon natin walang kredibilidad, kung ang nakikinabang lang sa ekonomiya, yung mayayaman, siguro kahit santo ang ilagay mo dyan, talagang we will end up criticizing the leader because hindi na lang question ng individual characteristics ng leader eh. Usapin ito ng paano ba natin, ano ang problema ng sistema, paano natin babaguhin ang sistema. So because we are not in favor of the present system, we are not in favor of the elites na may hawak ng sistema sa napakatagal na panahon, talagang natural na kahit sinong maluklok dyan, we will end up criticizing.
Okay. Sky?
So ano bang klaseng sistema, sir, ang hinahanap natin dito ngayon? Para naman mapaliliwanagan kami, di ba?
Tapatan naman tayo.
Well, yan ang isang napakahabang usapin, pero
Siguro in 30 seconds.
siguro we can reduce it sa a few very important issues. No? One, for example, yung magtataguyod ng constitutional ban on political dynasties. Pangalawa, lideratong mag-a-abolish ng pork barrel system and yung political patronage. Pangatlo, yung isang gobyernong ibabaliktad yung mga patakaran ng privatization, liberalization na siyang nagdulot ng napakaraming pahirap sa ating mga kababayan, lalo na yung mahihirap. Pang-apat, a leadership that will seriously pursue the peace process, no, both sa Muslim at saka sa communist rebellions. Siguro doon na lang muna malaking bagay na 'yon, no? Yung mas mahabang long term, no, yung para sa amin, yung isang tunay na yung people's democracy, mangangahulugan niya na ang liderato natin ay kakatawanin yung tunay na mayorya sa ating mamamayan. No? And babaguhin yung isang a better system of politics and economics na talagang ang karamihan ng mahihirap sa ating mamamayan ang siyang makikinabang. No? At hindi lang yung matagal ng nakikinabang na nasa mataas na antas ng ating lipunan.
Okay. Secretary Bert, is there really a threat to the current government, the current administration? You've been a defense secretary, a national security advisor for some time. How secure is Malacanang today, looking from the outside?
Alam mo, may mga puwersa na naggugwardya sa Malacanang. Ako, tinitingnan ko dito, hindi yung seguridad ng Malacanang, kundi seguridad ng bayan. Ang importante siguro na tinitingnan natin mabuti. Alam nyo, pasensya na, mula nung makita pa lang natin yung nangyari sa kidnapping sa Luneta, nakita na natin yung, come to think of it, pag tinitingnan mo yung nangyari noon at nangyayari ngayon, kita mo na ang pattern ng pamumuno. Dahil nagtataka kami, kunyari nung Hong Kong tragedy, I mean yung sa Luneta, hostage incident. Alam mo, meron tayong committee for that purpose, na ang chairman nun si Ochoa, dapat yung executive secretary. Kaya yung mga sinasabi natin na mga kakulangan sa estratehiya at saka sa mga equipment, ako masasabi ko na hindi totoo lahat yon. Meron tayong sufficient equipment. We have enough specialized forces to address those needs. No? Sa bagay, 2 weeks old pa lang doon ang ating gobyerno. Baka hindi pa masyadong na-brief ang ating executive secretary kung anong poder meron siyang hawak para aksyonan yung ganong mga aksyon. Yun ang tingin namin noon. Pero ito nangyayari ngayon sa Mama Sapano, ang tingin natin mukhang may hilig ang ating Pangulo na suluhin ang mga aksyon. No? Hindi kinukonsulta kasi alam mo yung Mama Sapano incident na yan, international terrorist ang target. At saka interesado dyan ang United States and other countries who are active in counterterrorism. No? Meron tayong procedure sa paghawak sa mga ganyan. Ang lumalabas, yung mga dapat na nakakaalam ay hindi daw nila alam eh. Yun ang problema
Hindi raw
dyan.
kasama sa chain of command. Wala raw chain of command.
Hindi chain of command. Meron tayong chain of command when it comes to counterterrorism. Yun yung Anti-Terrorism Council na ang chairman niya na yung ating executive secretary. Membro dyan ng DILG at saka Defense, National Security Advisor. Nandiyan ang pinakamatataas na pinuno para sa security matter. At iyan ay ina-activate, lalong-lalo na kapag ganito ang target. Noong panahon namin, siyempre, hindi tayo katulad ng Estados Unidos na napapanood natin in real time ang nangyayari. Pero kahit sa pa-text-text lang o patawag-tawag, yung council na yan, on the ground yan, minomonitor ang ganyang klaseng operation. Apparently, walang ganun eh.
Hindi, pero meron daw naman drone na nag-supervise.
Imagine kung may drone pa nga, di dapat real time.
At may YouTube video pa, di ba?
O yun. Ang hindi natin alam bakit hindi yung council ang tumitingin yan. Ina-activate yan sa ganyang klase ng operation. This is not a simple operation. And the target is not a simple man or a simple criminal. Wanted ito na terrorist, international. Pagka international terrorist, we are even allowed to invite foreign assistance. Tulungan yan eh. Kaya nagtataka, anong klaseng involvement meron kaya ang Amerikano dito? Bakit mukhang very amateur? No? Kung kano ay kasama dyan, baka hindi naman ganyan na nangyari kako. No?
Okay. Hindi ba stringer yung pinadala ng Amerika doon? Ano kaya?
Alam mo, kung makikinig ka sa mga bali-balita, ay talagang maiiyak ka. Hindi lang sa dahilan na hindi sinunod ang protocol. Mas may grabe pa dyan. Ang nababalita sabihan mo naman kami kung totoo o hindi para malaman ng taong bayan.
Mamaya
Sinasabi mga mercenary daw yung mga Amerikanong nahandyan can you imagine, dalawang sampal sa atin yan. No? Unang-una, informal yung kilos. Pangalawa, bakit tayo hindi insulto ng mga kano? Kung talagang tutulong sila, bakit pinapadalan tayo ng mercenary? Hindi official US forces ang gagamitin. Kasi pagka nire-respeto ka ng Amerika, tingnan mo sa Pakistan. Tinira si Bin Laden doon, di ba? Pinayagan ng Pakistan government. Anong nag-operate? Official US forces. Dito sa atin, mga mercenary ang ginagamit.
Ibig sabihin, rat patrol yun narito.
Ito yung mga chismis lang naman kaya nga ako.
Natutuwa
ako, nahandito si Secretary Llamas, maraming alam ko di ba? Di ba? Yun ang importanteng tinitingnan. Sabi ko, napakalaking insulto naman ito na ang tingin yata sa atin ng Amerika yung katulad ng tingin nila sa ibang mga papatakbuhing bansa na pwedeng mercenary na lang ang binibigay. Di ba?
Okay. Tatanungin ngayon natin si Secretary Llamas. Your reaction, please.
Anong masasabi mo, sir? Ito.
Kung si Secretary Gonzales kasi National Security Advisor ito at saka Secretary of National Defense. Mas maraming alam mo, dahil ako kasi isang abang political advisor lang at depende kung papakinggan yung advice ko. At ayon nga sa mga nabalita, mismo yung SILG at Chief PNP ay hindi alam ito, mas lalo namang wala akong alam dito. No?
Wala ka sa chain of command, sir.
Okay.
Pero,
subalit. Doon tayo sa subalit.
Pero katulad nga, si Secretary Gonzales nakasama sa gobyernong Arroyo ito, no? Si Teddy makakasama ito siguro sa future government. Kung nanalo si presidential candidate Villar, baka ito yung nasa Malacanang ngayon. No? Kaya ibig sabihin, lahat naman kami, may tinitingnan na malayo ang strategiya at vision kung ano dapat maging lipunan. Baka meron kayong mga pagkakaiba sa mga taktika paano makapunta ron. Kaya iba-iba yung mga sinuportahan namin presidente. No? Ang sinasabi ko lang, ang gobyerno naman at saka mga presidente, hindi naman mga perpektong mga institusyon yan. No? Kaya ang sinasabi ko lang, kanina nung introduction ko, dapat tignan yung gobyerno na parang cup half full, half empty. Ano yung mga positibong nagawa, ano yung mga negatibo, ano yung kulang, ano yung nandyan na. Yun lang naman sinasabi ko. Ang tawag yan, Teddy, dialectical, no? Tingnan natin yung negatibo at saka positibo, no? Kaya sinasabi ko...
Alin po mas marami, positibo o negatibo?
Well, depende nga. Kaya nagdedebate kami ngayon dahil pwede ko sabihin, mas marami yung positibo, sabihin nila, mas marami yung negatibo. Ang sinasabi ko lang kanina, hindi naman pwedeng iwanan na yung ibang trabaho ng gobyerno. Kahit merong mahalagang usapin, katulad ng mamasapano, no? Ng debate sa BBL, no? Sa 44. Kaya ibigyan lang ng perspektiba na may mga iba pang ginagawa na kailangan hindi iwanan. Habang hinaharap itong mahalagang usapin na ito na sabi ko nga kanina, mas marami pang alam sa akin si Secretary Gonzales.
But in as much as you're from Malacanang, siguro you can give us some insights. How does the President feel about what happened? Aside from the public speeches he delivered and the message of condolence he had with the family of the SAF widows and orphans.
Well, as an employee, as a political advisor, no, iiwanan ko na lang doon sa mga sinabi niya. Hindi ko naman pwedeng i-interpret yung sinabi niya. No? Kung ano yung mga sinabi niya sa mga speeches, kung ano yung ginawa niya doon sa mga pamilya, yun yung nangyari. No? As an employee, as a political advisor, hindi ko naman pwedeng i-second guess o interpret. Siguro pag wala na ako sa gobyerno, katulad ni Secretary Gonzales, pwede ko lang sabihin yung aking mga opinion. Pero sa ngayon, yung
That will come sa 2016.
Katulad ng kaibigan mong sila Sani Coloma, sila Edwin Lacerda, no? Meron kami mga role. Yan, no?
Okay.
Pero hindi ako mag-i-invoke ng executive privilege.
Okay. Yun ang maganda ron. Pero,
Nilinaw lang natin saan tayo nanggagaling.
okay, in as much as some people say impeachment will not work, being the political advisor, can you count on the congressmen na nasa panig ng administrasyon ngayon? Dahil lang sasabi nila, pag may palubog na barko, ang unang tumatalon yung mga daga. Hindi ko naman sinasabing daga yung mga mambabatas doon, pero these people, alam ni Teddy ito, would always know which part of the bread has butter.
Well, yes, pero I doubt din kasi at this point, no? At this point, kung sila Teddy kasi yung nag-file ng impeachment last year, no? Nakita naman natin kung gaano karami yung bumoto ron. I doubt kung drastically magbabago yan, no? Kung magbabago yan. Kaya yung possibilities of impeachment, ang tingin ko maliit at this point. Lalo na, baka yung ibang mga tao na galit sa presidente, no? Ayaw naman siyang i-impeach dahil baka mas galit sila sa papalit. No? Ayun yung kwan.
Hindi naman racist yung dahilan.
Hindi naman. No? Ikalawa, baka yung iba dahil halos election year na, antayin na wala namang re-election, no? Antayin na lang natin yung parating na eleksyon, no? Ayun yung sinasabi ng iba, no? Yung ikatlo naman ay baka wait and see. Tingnan natin paano haharapin itong mga pangyayaring ito ng presidente at bago sila. Kaya duda ko dun sa sinasabi ni Congressman Casiño na mayorya ng populasyon ay gusto nang magkaroon ng pagbabago sa pamunuan at this point, no? Ayun yung kwan. Yun yung aking kaya yung impeachment o yung ouster ay duda ako na magsasucceed within the next few months.
Okay. In as much as we're talking of impeachment and some other extra legal ways of getting the president out of office, in some countries they say a president can be elected because of the 3 A's. One is Allah, the other is the army, and the other is America. Ano po ang tingin ninyo ron? Can it happen in the Philippines?
Yung parating na eleksyon o yung
Sa ngayon.
eleksyon.
You may calls about impeachment or removal of the president. Will Allah, will army, and America play a role?
Tingin ko dito sa eleksyon, I doubt play a role eh. Siyempre, yung mga binabanggit nga ni Secretary ng mga coup, siyempre, ang sentro dyan, militar. No? Sentro dyan, militar. Pero halos lahat dyan, nag-fail. Kung hindi mo bibilangin yung KERAP, yung withdrawal of support ng military. No? So lahat dyan nag-fail. Ibig sabihin, hindi ganun kadali. Yung US, mahalaga pa rin yung role nila sa Philippines at this point. Pero hindi na to katulad nung nakaraan na both politically, economically, militarily, dominant yung role nila dito sa bansa at saka sa region. No? Tingin ko ang mas dominant ngayon, yung tao pa rin. Lalo na ngayon na ang daming batang botante. No? Lalo na ngayon na meron kang internet na ang daming nakatingin, may social media. Tapos, 98% ng mga tao nakatingin sa media, radyo, TV. Ang mas mag-weekend pa nga yung traditional sources of votes, yung mga warlords, no? Dahil yung command nila sa kanilang base nitong past decades lumuluwag because of this revolution in information and technology tsaka sa media. Kaya tingin ko more than at any other time yung democracy as such ay mas may strength ngayon than nung nakaraan. Ngayon, ito pa yung demokrasya na perpekto, na gusto natin? Definitely not. Pero yung role ng tao ngayon, mas direct kumpara nung mga nakaraang dekada. Na ang nagko-control ng boto, yung mga ward leaders, yung mga warlords, yung mga vested interest na may Ngayon, mahalaga pa rin ng resources. Pero sa social media, lessen yung role ng resources.
Sir, I would like to ask, how open is our president when it comes to advices and critics? Kasi kung ikita mo, sabi ni Secretary Gonzales, nagsusulod daw siya. So, gaano siya ka-open sa pakikinig sa mga critics, especially sa media ngayon, sa social media? Anong mga ginagawa niya or gaano siya ka-open sa pagkikinig dito?
Open.
Open lang.
All right. At least nagkakaintindihan tayo. Nagkakaintindihan tayo. We'll open the floor to our friends from the media. Priority natin yung members of the media to ask questions. The cardinal rule is, please identify yourself and the entity you come from. Straight to the... Yes, please.
Yeah, good morning po. I'm Juvie de Guzman from DWBL. Tanungin ko lang Secretary Llamas, kasi meron pong sinabi si Secretary de Lima hinggil dun sa mga leader ng mga tila ba parang nag-aaklas or nagli-lead ng isang bagay na...
The National Transformation Council.
Secretary Llamas, ito po ba hindi po ba pananakot lamang para umatras yung mga gustong magpahayag ng kanilang damdamin? Sa inyo lang pong sariling opinyon. Alam naman po natin kung ano yung mga do's and don'ts ng gobyerno. Pero sa inyo po, ano po sa palagay ninyo ang talagang damdamin ng gobyerno ngayon?
Tingin ko pinapaalala lang ni Secretary Laila de Lima na may mga karapatan tayo sa pagbatikos, sa pagbanat, pero siyempre meron ding boundaries yan na katulad nga nung binabanggit ng Secretary Gonzales, iba na ang coup. Iba na yung gumagamit ng armadong pamamaraan. Siyempre, lalabas yan, kukross siya ng border na yon, no? Yan yung pinapaalala niya. Ngayon, kung yung iba matatakot, yung iba mas lalong mag-aaklas, desisyon na yan ng mga tao na yan. Pinapaalala lang niya, as Secretary of Justice, hanggang dito yan. No? Hanggang dito yan. Pero wala naman siyang pinahuli. Wala naman siyang kinasuhan. No? Kaya,
Opo.
na hindi absolute or hindi unlimited yung sinasabing pagbatikos at pag-aklas. Pag may hawak ka ng baril, may hawak ka ng bomba, iba na yon.
Hindi po ba nami-mislead lang po ang gobyerno natin? Kasi sang-ayon dun sa mga naririnig kong mga leader, hindi naman po yun yung kanilang talagang intensyon. Ang intensyon lang daw po nila ay parang itama lang yung mga bagay na parang tila nalilihis sa mga patakbo ngayon.
Well, walang problema ron. No? Walang problema ron. No? Yun naman yung esensya ng ating imperfect democratic system. Hindi ito yung guided democracy na pinopropose ni Tingting Cojuangco. May pinanggit siya noong isang araw na parehas ng Indonesia noong panahon ni Sukarno.
Thank you very much.
Yes, Teddy.
Sige, sir.
Mag-respond lang ako doon. Kami huy nalulungkot at nababahala sa ganyang pronouncements ni Secretary de Lima. Kilala namin si Secretary de Lima. She was the chairperson of the Commission on Human Rights for a time. At malaki ang respeto namin sa kanila. Pero sa ganitong mga pahayag niya, tila ba nawawala na yung pagiging human rights lawyer niya. At para bang katunog na niya yung mga tagapagsalita ni Marcos noong panahon ng martial law. No? And even during the time of Arroyo, if you remember, kami hong 6 na kongresista sa Kongreso ay kinasuhan nga ng rebellion dahil sa aming pagsangkot sa mga kilos protesta nung panahon yon ni Pangulong Gloria Arroyo. And talagang itong ganito mga pronouncements ay walang lugar. No? Especially now, we are celebrating people power. Sa ganyang mga pahayag ni Secretary de Lima, parang sinasabi niya, dapat people power should never have happened at all. Dahil yun, open defiance yun. against the authorities. So, baka mas magandang wag nang magsalita ng ganyan si Secretary de Lima at hayaan na lang nila ang taong bayan na magpahayag, magtipon kung gusto nila at kahit manawagan ng resign o pagpapatalsik. No? Hanggat wala namang nalalabag na batas, tingin ko karapatan ng bawat isa sa atin na gawin yan.
Thank you so much.
Secretary Gonzales, would you care to react? Kasama ka doon sa National Transformation Council. Di po ba? Kayo yata yung kakasuhan.
Mabuti naman na nandito si Secretary Ronald Llamas. Medyo nabuhayan ako ng loob ng kaunti na baka may magtatanggol sa atin kahit papaano sa mangyayari. Alam mo kung titignan natin itong sinabi ni suportado ko kay pasensya ka na kami ngayon na magkakampi. Ni Teddy. Suportado ko yung mga pinagsasabi ni Teddy ngayon kaya hindi na ako nagkikikibusa na no?
Pag nalaman ng mga boss niya, yung sinasabi na sinusuportahan mo, baka mapahamak.
And anyway, ang gagawin ko na lang ngayon, kaninang papunta nga ako dito, sabi ko, ako na lang ang aamin na National Transformation Council member. Sasabihan ko yung iba na huwag na kayong umamin kasi susuluhin na lang natin kung sakalit talagang medyo mag-init ang ulo.
So ikaw na muna yung general na Peñas, ganun?
Ganun na lang muna. Ganun na lang muna ang ating gagawin sa kasulukuyan dahil alam mo, yung hindi ko alam kung naiintindihan talaga ng mga nasa pamahalaan, kung pwede, pakihatid, yung kung saan ang galing itong National Transformation Council, Precisely, alam mo, more than 3 years old na itong ating council na nag-uusap-usap. At ang talagang basehan nito, dahil medyo nakapag-input ako ng kaunti, sabi ko, napapanahon yata in the world, na nagkakaroon ng mga panibagong pagkukwestiyon sa iba't ibang lipunan sa bawat mga bansa at nagkakaroon ng para bang desire na magbago ulit ang mga lipunan. Sabi ko, yung bagay na yan, kapag nangyayari yan sa isang lipunan, that's a golden opportunity for change.
Okay.
Pero at the same time, kung ang change na yan ay hindi mo binigyan ng kaunting direksyon, pwedeng mauwi yan sa cycle of violence. Kunyari, example, yun nangyari na dito sa Egypt, Mm-hmm. Ang galing ng pasok ng social media dyan at saka ng taong bayan. Can you imagine removing Mubarak?
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine that? Pero natanggal si Mubarak. Ang problema, hindi yata masyadong naghanda yung mga kumilos doon in terms of what you will do afterwards. Kaya ang nangyari, isinuli nila sa militar ulit yung poder ng gobyerno. So kung isinuli mo sa pinanggalingan, at tapos nakita mo na bukas na sa pagbabago ang isip ng mga mamamayan, gulo ang hinahabol mo dyan. Left and right rebellion, I am very worried. Pasensya na, mula pa noong nangyari sa Luneta, nakita mo yung pattern ng decision-making process ng Malacanang. Sabi ko, darating ang araw, major ang pagkakamali na tatama sa atin. At yan ay may trigger the kind of change that is happening in many parts of the world.
Okay.
And if it does happen to us, there has to be some form of direction. Wag na natin, kasi pagka ang lipunan ay nasa isang crisis na katulad na sinasabi ni Teddy, totoo yun We are in crisis.
Okay.
Sorry, Chief, you have to inform the President that we are in crisis. The sooner he face reality, the better.
All right.
Kaya isa na lang.
Okay.
Tapusin ko na lang ito.
Sige.
Pasensya ka na, ang mga elderly umiikot bago dumiretso sa puntos
Diretso yun, tumbukin nyo.
Tutumbukin na natin. So sabi ko nga, kailangan binibigyan ng direksyon niya. Kasi ngayon, sa sitwasyon ngayon, lahat ng klase ng inisitiba lalabas. Expect that to happen. Ngayon, kung walang alternative na maipapakita ng peaceful change, baka maging violent tayo. Kaya yan ang preoccupation ng National Transformation Council more than anything else. Is to provide a peaceful way, a formula of a peaceful way of changing society today.
Thank you. Next question from a friend from FOCAP.
Hi, this is Frank Fu from Guangming Daily, China. My question is about how this staff issue may affect the Philippines' foreign relationship with other countries. First, how it may affect the Philippine and the U.S. relationships. There's a lot of talk about the U.S. involvement in the SAF incident. Why the involvement of the U.S. matters in this incident? Because over the years, there are lots of cooperations, no matter in the military or other aspects of the bilateral relationships, and there are comprehensive cooperation. So how the cooperation in this field between Philippines and the U.S. matters? Is it, for example, suppose if the U.S. directly involved in the incident, is this kind of against the Constitution or something like that? How it may affect Philippine and the U.S. relations? This is my first question. My second question is how this incident may affect the Philippine-China relationships. Since the last met between President Aquino and President Xi Jinping in Beijing APEC last November, there's already the kind of certain kind of signs of improvement or certain kind of momentum of good warmth of relationship between both of the countries. I don't know if it's a coincidentally or a separate issue. Very recently, early this month, we witnessed that there's 2 protests or 3 protests from the DFA of Philippines against China. I'm wondering if this protest relates to this SAF issue or not, or how this SAF incident may affect the Philippine-China relations in the last part of the time of the President Aquino's administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Let's start with the Secretary.
By the way, I hope that you could take the questions in English. Thank you.
I doubt if the unfolding relationship between China and the Philippines will be affected by these internal matters. It may, but for now, I doubt if it will affect. The unfolding relationship between China and the Philippines is, compared to the previous years, I agree with you, is improving. Of course, there are statements about the building of this and that, the case in the UNCLOS, how fast will it proceed to settle the issue. But I think since the visit of the President to Beijing last year and his 5-10-minute meeting with Xi Jinping, I think there's been a thaw in the relationship, in the intensity of the relationship. And in the next few months, President Xi Jinping is supposed to visit the Philippines. I think for now, there are building blocks being established so that that visit will be in a climate more of friendship than in a climate of antagonism. So for now, I'm optimistic about the relationship between China and the Philippines, since we are very near each other, and unlike Japan, the Philippines and China have no violent history against each other. So I'm more optimistic than pessimistic with regards to that relationship.
With the U.S.-Philippines relations?
Well, historically, you're asking about Philippines and the U.S. Historically, we were a colony by the Americans. So, and for a long time, their influence in the Philippines has been very strong. Even up to now, there are treaties and agreements with them, with certain limits, which is existing with the U.S. That's why relationships with them will continue, because of these treaties and relationship. Unless you have a new government with a mandate from a vast majority of the population, which will say otherwise, that we should lessen or cut relationship with the Americans, then that will be a game changer in the future. For now, I think one of the agreements was the visiting forces agreement, et cetera, et cetera.
Would you care to react, Teddy?
I think one problem with your question is that until now, we really are not clear on the role that the U.S. played in the Mama Sapano incident. The official line is that they were not involved, or at most they were only involved in providing there was intelligence coordination. But many independent reports and information slowly is revealing that they played a much bigger role. Possibly even might even have been directly involved in the actual operations, with reports that they may have even suffered casualties. And who these American agents were, whether they were there on their official capacity or were they defense contractors, those are the questions that still have to be clarified. I think the impact on this, not only on Philippine-China relations, but in general, is that if it is confirmed that the Americans were involved in violation of the Constitution, it would impact on the way other countries view the Philippines. The Philippines has always been seen as a U.S. lackey in Asia, and that would bolster that image. And I think that would not be good for our relations, not only with China, but also with other countries here in the Asia-Pacific. But definitely, we think that the United States itself should clarify the role of their, whether their forces or their citizens, whatever, played in the Mama Sapano incident, especially given the backdrop that as early as 2002, U.S. President Bush declared the Philippines as the second front of the war on terror. And you have this pivot to Asia of the United States forces, where we will expect more presence of U.S. armed forces in the Philippines under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. So these are things that, so the Mama Sapano incident definitely will have a big impact, because it will show how these agreements, how these military intelligence relationships actually work on the ground. And we think that in this case, it appears that the Mama Sapano raid was a U.S. operation using Philippine SAF forces as cannon fodder for their objectives. And that would not be a good signal to the international community.
Secretary Gonzales, would you care to answer the questions of our friend from Guangming Daily? Your thoughts about it?
Well, when it comes to international terrorism, acceptable yung assistance coming from...
English, please.
Sorry. Well, when it comes to foreign or terrorism, international terrorism, cooperation among states are welcome. So there's no reason why we should hide if the Americans have decided to help us in the pursuit for this particular international terrorist. What we are really questioning is the manner of U.S. involvement. No? If it were official, I think it will be welcome. No? But as Teddy has said, we will look into what kind of involvement the American has done in this particular incident. When it comes to China, it's very regretful that we have this kind of questions regarding our relationship with China. China and the Philippines have been traditionally friendly, no? And more than friendly, in fact. No? We have had several incidents in the past similar to what has happened in our borders. And there were no threats of war. There were no grandstanding that has come from our leaders. What we did is to pursue a diplomatic initiative that is premised on friendship and mutual respect. We expect that if there is a new government in the Philippines, this kind of attitude will be restored towards China. China is our biggest neighbor. So the position there is probably restore that kind of friendship and mutual trust that we enjoy with China in the past.
Thank you very much. More questions from the floor? Yes. Please identify yourself and the entity you come from.
From the Philippine Travel News. I'm asking about for Secretary Llamas concerning terrorist that slain terrorist leader Marwan. This is wanted in Australia or only in by the United States Central. I mean the United States Department of Justice, FBI. What about in Australia? Because this was implicated in the 2002 October 12 Bali bombing. Marwan, I'm about. Do you have a cooperation with the Australian federal government? Secretary Lama.
Well, as Secretary Gonzales stated, governments in the campaign against international terror, they accept support from other countries up within certain limits. That's why I think I agree with you that Marwan is also on the list of Australia because of the Bali bombing. And I think much more, not only Australia and the US. I think other countries, I think even including Europe, no? Because he's a member of Jemaah Islamiyah and his organization is on the international terror list of a lot of countries in the world, including Europe. So not only Australia.
What about the ransom bounty? It's only the United States is
It's not a ransom. It's not a ransom. He was not kidnapped.
No. I mean the
Okay,
reward
All right,
money. It's also
I'm not sure about the policy of other countries in terms of ransom. In terms of bounty. In terms of bounty.
Bounty. So it's only the United States?
Only the United States is very open about it.
So
I don't know about other.
You don't have intelligence
but
reports?
I'm almost sure other countries have their own bounty,
Yes.
but they don't flaunt it or they don't publicize it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Questions from the media? Asa si Estong? Umalis siya si Estong. Yes, Mr. Recto Mercene from the Department of Foreign Affairs Media.
Good morning. You mentioned Gonzales, Secretary Gonzales. You mentioned before that we are in a crisis, and I think it was the Binay camp who suggested that the administration should convene the National Security Council, which Malacanang turned down. Do you think it's really time to convene the NSC? And otherwise, if Malacanang refuses, what should be the next step?
Well, there is always wisdom in calling for the National Security Council to meet. You know, while we are all focused on the Mama Sapano incident, you know, there are so many questions that needs to be faced by our policymakers. I would strongly recommend the convening of the National Security Council. May problema lang kaunti dyan na physical kasi paano mo dadalhin dyan si Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo nakakulong? You know, kasi National Security Council, former presidents are involved, no? So, yun lang ang makikita ko dyan, no? Problema. But I will recommend it at this time.
Any follow-up, Recto? Okay. Later. All right. Questions from the floor? None? Let's welcome former Senator Kit Tatad, former chair of the Foreign Relations Committee. Probably our good friend Frank would be comfortable if we asked the question. Yes, please.
Yeah. Would you allow Secretary Tatad to answer that question? Is it time for for the administration to convene the National Security Council as proposed by some other camps?
So we're due.
Really? All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Any impact on the relations between America and the Philippines, especially with the alleged role of American troopers in Mamasapano?
I think there's an attempt to divert public attention from the real issues into this particular angle. No? This is not to be discounted, but it has to be based on real data. And I have not seen any real data. The real issue for me is the responsibility of the president. As far as the death of the 44 SAF commandos is concerned, no? There was a very great possibility of preventing the massacre. The president and perhaps Ronald can confirm this, was in Zamboanga City, monitoring the developments from the station there, and he was in a position to see what was happening. the particular instance, the reinforcement call was heard. I mean, the policemen were reported to have ended texting their own relatives so that those relatives could relay the distress call to their superiors. And there was a request for instructions. Papasok na ba kami? No, negative, stand down. Now, there's only one possible source of this command, and that is the president. And if he was not the source, he was the only one who could have reversed or canceled that order. This did not happen. So you have 44 dead commandos.
Okay.
Now this is the real issue. We have heard so many congressmen, senators talk about so many things, pero iniikutan ito. No? Now I want to focus on this.
Okay. So who ordered or who did not order?
Yes.
All right.
Who failed to cancel the order.
Okay. Secretary, would you be privy to it?
No, but I think in the Senate hearing now, Secretary Rojas and Chief of Staff Katapang and Secretary Gasmin are supposed to issue their answers exactly to that question, and even the text messages, the exchanges between the different people involved in the operation while they were in Zamboanga. I think Secretary Rojas, Secretary Gasmin, and Chief of Staff Katapang were with the President on that day in Zamboanga. So I think now, by this time, they're answering exactly those questions in the Senate hearing now.
Yeah. But do you expect them to really give the real score?
Well, I expect Secretary Rojas to release all the text messages he received in the Senate hearing.
Really? Which makes me wonder, why do we have to rely on text messages? Don't we have a more effective way of communicating?
Melo, let me react to that answer from Ronald. No? We would be quite happy to hear them answer these questions forthrightly. But if you recall, the initial statements from these people, Secretary Gasmin, Rojas, was to the effect that they knew what was happening, but they did not share it with the president. Now, my impression is that it was the reverse situation. The president knew everything that was happening because these guys were kept out of the loop. Of course, in Zamboanga, nagkasama na sila ron. Kung anong nangyayari doon, ang magkasama, nalaman na ng mga cabinet members. No? But initially, they were out. They were out. That's why, if you look at the operational chain of command, ang dapat dyan, the president, bababa sa kanyang DILG Secretary Rojas, and then bababa sa PNP Chief. At the time, suspendido si Purisima, si Espina was acting PNP Chief. Both Rojas and Espina were kept out. Ang ginamit, yung suspendidong PNP Chief. So legally, the only one operating was the President. Diretso siya na Peñas. Diretso doon sa force provider. Let us not forget that this SAF is merely a force provider. Walang operational command sa kanyang pwersa. The operational command will have to come from elsewhere. I'm trying to sound like an expert. We are not, no? Pero it is the correct analysis that we are hearing from the experts. No? So, okay.
Yes.
Melo, siguro sa punto de vista lang ng maraming mga groups na...
Pwede ba Englishin natin ng konti dahil may mga foreign wires
I think from the perspective of the many groups that have been discussing this issue, the answers will not come from Rojas, Katapang, or Espina. As far as we are concerned, hearsay naman ang alam ng mga yan. No? They were precisely out of the loop. No? They were not informed. So the only persons who can answer with certainty and with credibility are the President, President Aquino, and General Purisima. And both of them so far have refused. No? Purisima has resorted to saying that he needs the approval of the President. And the President himself, through his spokesperson, said that he will tell the truth at the proper time. So they have not answered the questions yet. And this is the reason why on Wednesday, February 25, people will be gathering at EDSA, Camp Crame, precisely to demand truth and accountability. Yun pa rin eh. We have to hear it straight from the President, from General Purisima, what their rules are, paano nila pinapasok ang Estados Unidos dito, at ano ang ginawa nila. Because unless those questions are answered by the President himself and by Purisima, we will be given the runaround. At tingin ko yun ang pakiramdam ng mga pamilya ng SAF na nakausap ni Pangulo mismo, wala silang nakuhang matinong sagot. And people will be demanding that. So on Wednesday, sa pagpunta ho namin sa EDSA, sa Miyerkules, yan po ang pangunahing panawagan, truth and accountability. And of course, some groups are already resigned, no, and are calling for the President's resignation because precisely he has refused to answer the very important questions.
Teddy, would you be able to reach EDSA on Wednesday?
I would think so. No?
You're optimistic?
Ang plano naman namin, we will occupy one lane. It will be a 3-hour event. Mm-hmm. It will be a symbolic human chain from Camp Crame to Ortigas. There will be an interfaith service at the start and then a symbolic human chain. So, tingin ko naman hindi yan, given the proper coordination, it will not be a problem. Yeah.
Okay, but why is it that previous activities did not attract people as what has been said in the media?
Well, depende ano ang target eh. Hindi naman tayo nagta-target ng the same scale and magnitude as EDSA 1 or EDSA 2. No? And to expect that right now, kami rin hindi naman yun ang ating target. No? What we want is just to provide a venue for people to come out, to express themselves. And if that leads to bigger mobilizations and bigger mass actions, hindi lang po sa Maynila, but nationwide, then so be it. Pero kailangan talagang may manawagan. No? At tingin ko yan, kahit ilang tao lang, but of course, on Wednesday, hindi naman ilang tao yan. But I think what is important is that the public demand should not be, dapat magtuloy-tuloy.
Okay. Secretary Gonzales, coming from where you are as former Secretary of Defense and the National Security Advisor, where is big business now? Is the big business with the Aquino administration? Or are they with the other side already?
Well, we have not made any attempt to talk to any big business at this time, so I wouldn't really know what their attitude is to the National Transformation Council. Our faith community leaders are very, very, very serious in this matter, saying that let us not approach big business or vested interest in the country. This has to be an authentic clamor of our people for change. So I really don't know. But my sense, palagay ko from the indicators of flow of investments, I think they are on a wait and see. Many of the investments I know have been postponed for some time for implementation.
Okay, Senator Tatad, do you think the Mama Sapano incident would affect the country's image as far as business is concerned?
Well, I suppose that many business are still hedging, but because of the increasing mounting demand for change, for the stepping down of this administration, many are hopeful that this country will improve. There is life for the better, no?
And that would come when the president resigns, ganon?
We do not use the term resign because many must believe that the 2010 election, like the 2013 election, was flawed. There's no real election.
So it was an installation by Picos.
Because and using all sorts of tricks there. No? So that's our position. So we use the term stepping down.
Okay.
We are optimistic that reason will prevail, and Mama Sapano simply became the last straw. No? Brought everything to a head.
Okay. You're optimistic that it is the feather that will break the camel's back.
It probably has been broken. No?
Okay. Secretary Llamas, what do you have to say about it? Will the Mama Sapano incident be the feather that would break the camel's back, so to speak?
I think the Mama Sapano incident is very important, especially of the lives lost, especially of the questions raised, etc. But I tend to think otherwise, that it will break the camel or whatever's back no, at this point.
Okay.
Especially with election practically around the corner.
Okay.
I think people will be
Considerate?
accepting these things to be settled in the next election.
Yeah. There was this article or somebody from Senpeg who said that every president from Tita Cory down to Gloria Arroyo, during the last portion of the leadership, yung popularity at acceptance ay bumagsak. And with Mama Sapano, it appears that President Aquino is no exemption from the study of Senpeg. So do you think the president can recover before June 30, 2016?
Well, as I said earlier, it depends on how people will read the cup half full, half empty. No? Definitely, this present crisis will have an effect. But within the year, other things may happen. So I'm not totally sure that the back of the camel will be beyond fixing.
Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah, good morning to everybody. Leo Santiago. Can we ask Secretary Tatad and Secretary Gonzales to answer this question? Is there we know that there is a flame burning or smoldering. Do we see the scenario that it will burst into bigger conflagration or bigger fire that all sectors can embrace? There is a spark that should come in with this crisis situation, just like Congressman Casiño is saying. So the two can answer our question. Is there a further trigger to fan the flame?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Leo. So do you see a much bigger event?
Well, I'm neither a prophet nor a clairvoyant, so I will not try to predict what will happen. But I can only invite you to the facts at hand. There is reason for us to get involved, and you should get involved. Everyone else should get involved.
Would you care to add? Okay. All right. More questions from the audience? All right. Okay. This is 2015. A columnist said in 500 days, Kuya Pinoy will leave Malacanang. What do you think will happen? Let's start with Teddy. Ayan. Hindi naman ito yung section na manghuhula, pero given all what's happening today, anong appreciation mo? What will happen?
Well, I cannot say what will happen. No? Alam mo, napaka-fluid ng sitwasyon sa ating bansa. But what we would like to happen is for the President to step down and for his government to be replaced by a new government, hopefully an interim transition government or transition council the concept is familiar to everyone, that will now undertake the necessary political and economic reforms, policy reforms, so that in the next elections, hopefully in 2017 or 2018, we will be able to elect more credible, better leaders, and we will have an environment where people are empowered. That is the vision, I think. And this transition council or whatever interim structure that will be built should have people of known integrity, walang bahid na, with all due respect to everyone, walang bahid na na-involved sa dating mga gobyernong hindi nagsilbi sa mamamayan. Wala ring mga political agenda. They do not front for anyone. These people should really have integrity. They should have support from the ground. Because otherwise, mahihirapan po ang bagong gobyerno rin. It will always be vulnerable to all kinds of attacks. And this is the challenge, I think, to all the groups who are now involved in this resign movement, that we come up with a credible, realistic alternative. Well, that is the challenge. And I think it is not too late. Of course, may election na ho. Sabi nga ni Secretary Llamas, in the next few months. But I think hindi na dapat maghintay. And if we can use this opportunity now to introduce these kinds of changes, then that would be the best thing. At that is what we will try to do in the next few months.
Okay. May pahabol lang daw na tanong. Pagbigyan natin yung kaibigan nating si Linggoy mula sa Opinion.
Magandang umaga po. Linggoy from Opinion. Wala po akong boses, hindi dahil nag-rally po ako. Kung hindi kaya hindi ako nag-rally dahil wala akong boses. Anyway, ang tanong ko ay ganito, no? Ang pinag-usapan natin yung kung pababain, kung tatanggalin, kung ganito, kung gano'n. Dalawa po ang punto ko na maaaring hindi nyo natalakay. No? Yung unang-una, meron bang paraan sa ating saligang batas at sa mga batas na ang magpapabakasyon sa presidente ay hindi kaming taga-Kalsada kung hindi yung official family ng president? Kasi sila ang mas nakakaalam kung sira ng ulo ng kanilang leader o pwede pa. Number 1 yun. No? Number 2, dahil dito sa nangyari na 44 ang patay na pulis, hindi nyo ba naisip na ang pumatay kay Indira Gandhi ay security niya? Albeit, yung security niya ay mga Sikh. Yung Sikh, yung merong ganun. Kasi po, linusob po yung temple sa Amritsar. No? Ngunit, hindi ba mas masakit pa yung pinabayaang mapatay kaysa yung lumusob? Yung SAP ay hindi lang pulis, sila po ay elite units. At matindi po, malalim yung pagbubudel fight ng mga magkakasama. Mahilig ang PSG na kumuha ng mga elite na maging membro ng PSG. Hindi nyo ba naisip na may posibilidad na hindi na po tayo kailangan magpawis, maghirap sa kalsada? Kung hindi, yung kaibigan o kamag-anak ng isa sa 44, isang bala ka lang. Di ba?
Okay.
Tanong po yun, tanong ha.
Okay, dalawa yun. Okay, may batas ba na magsasabing magbakasyon na yung presidente mula sa official family?
Sa saligang batas po natin, the Constitution provides that a majority of the cabinet can officially notify the leaders of Congress that the president is no longer in a position to discharge his duties. And after that, he steps down and allows the constitutional successor to take over. No? Yung pangalang tanong, kay Ronald yun. No? It's not for us. But just to continue, ang position namin, the Constitution no longer works because the President has taken over virtually the tripartite system of government.
Thank you. Yung security from within.
Well, duda ho ako na mangyayari yon. No? Bagamat mahirap namang sabihing imposible. No? Historically, wala tayong ganong tradisyon. Ikalawa, siyempre may betting process din yan. Pero sabi nga ni kasamang Linggoy, hindi mo naman sigurado lahat ng tao at lahat ng puso ng mga tao na yon. Kaya hindi ko naman sasabihin na imposible. Pero I doubt if that is possible at this point.
Pahabol ko na rin yung EDSA. Parking lot na lang ba? O what happened to EDSA 1? Senator, you were with the opposition at the time. You were against Marcos since 81, right? And EDSA, EDSA happened in 86.
So ano? Well, EDSA has been misused and falsified. Pero mahabang usapan yan. We need several sessions. No?
Okay. So, ganun lang. Pinakinabangan ng ilan, naghirap ang taong bayan.
Ginamit. Pero yung oligarchy, hindi nabuwag. Dapat yun ang nabuwag ng EDSA. Yung totoong pagbabago. Gusto ng kaliwa, gusto ng kanan, gusto ng lahat, yung pagbabagong tunay. Hindi nangyari yun.
Okay. Thank you. Kabert, ikaw Defense Secretary. Anong tingin mo? Yung bang EDSA, may parking lot na lang ba?
Huwag nating pilitin na ulitin yung people power ng EDSA 1. Hindi na uulit ang people power. Hindi rin yan na-organisa. Yan ay dumadating na lamang. No? Kapag pulso ng bayan yan For some reason, societies have this kind of ability. Nagkakaugnay-ugnay ang pag-iisip at kumikilos as one. No? Kaya hindi natin yan. Kaya nga ako, gusto ko sana alalahanin na lang yung significance ng nakaraang EDSA 1 event. Ang paghandaan na yung susunod kasi bago yan it will assume totally new forms. We don't know what form. Ang importante dyan is that it is supported by the majority of our people. Kaya ang ina-anticipate natin yung susunod na people power.
Okay. Teddy, revolutions devour its own people. You're saying meron kang council. But do you also foresee that the members of the council will devour each other?
Ang importante dito yung accountability sa mamamayan. Because leaders will always have kumbaga wala namang perpektong tao Kaya nga napakahalaga that the people themselves are empowered and they are able to check on their leaders. At yun yung kailangan natin mangyari kung mauulit man yung people power in whatever form that is. Yan yung isang kailangan nating bantayan na kung sino man ang maluluklok sa pwesto, they will always be accountable to the people. No? And again, that is a matter that all the groups will have to discuss and unite on.
Okay. Secretary Llamas, parting shot for this morning's Tapatan sa Aristocrat.
Well, nag-agree ako na hindi mauulit yung unique uprising katulad ng EDSA 1. Pero pwede siyang maging inspirasyon sa other movements, from Arab Spring to other anti-dictatorship struggles. No? Yung moment na yon, yung people power na but it cannot be repeated. No? It will have different complexions. At ikalawa, yung moment na yon ay dapat masundan ng mga mas structural and transformative agenda. Yun yung kulang dun sa EDSA. At tingin ko, next generation, di yung generation namin, may have that challenge, no? Para mas maging structural at saka transformative. Or yung sinasabi nga ni Teddy, yung mga mamumuno niyan ay yung mga hindi na bahiran.
Okay. Yes, please.
Patapos na ba tayo?
Patapos na po tayo.
2 punto lamang, Melo. Maybe 3. Una, yung sinasabi ng iba nating kabayan, 500 tulog na lang yan. Maghintay na tayo. You know, ang sabi ni San Agustin, paano mong mapapag-usapan yung what will happen in the next few months? You do not know what's going to happen in the next few hours. No? Ang problema, dito sa Mama Sapano, nagkaroon tayo ng malaking katanungan dyan. Ano ba nangyari? Nag-aberya ang Pangulo eh. Ano ba ito? Maling decision lamang or psychological disorder? Kung mayroong psychological disorder, hindi ka nakatitiyak na the next moment, walang mangyayari. So, may 44 dead ka, January 25. Sa susunod na pangyayari, anong mangyayari? You cannot predict that. Kaya hindi pwede sabihin, 500 tulog na lang, maghintay na tayo. Pangalawa, eleksyon. No? Yung eleksyon, yan ang tamang pamamaraan sa pagpili ng mamumuno sa bayan. Kung umaandar, kung hindi nilapastangan, ay wala na, hindi na umaandar yung eleksyon natin. The constitutional process has been thoroughly wrecked. Yun ang aayusin natin. Ngayon, yung third point, yung hindi nabahiran, sino man taong hindi nabahiran ng kahit na ano? May mga, ang pwede mo lang sabihin na hindi nabahiran, yung patay na o hindi pa pinanganganak. Right now, all those participating, some are posturing as immaculate advocates of whatever, pero they are identified with ideologies that have failed the people. So, sino? Oh, so, you have to be very circumspect and carefully assess the records of these guys. No? Diba? Si Tatad was identified with Marcos, spokesman ng martial law. No? Try to point out kung si Tatad ay merong specific violation of law, violation of human rights, may inaping tao ba yan, may nasigawan ba yan in the 10 years that he was in the cabinet. Yeah, I lay the challenge. No? Not because I'm aspiring to be part of anything, but I just want the debate to be objective. No?
Okay.
Maalis yung prejudices na hindi dapat pumapasok.
Alright. Yeah.
Okay. Di ba si Bert Gonzales was Defense Secretary, National Security Advisor ni Arroyo. Si Arroyo nakakulong. So ano ba?
Si Berting nasa labas.
Nasa labas. Ano bang specific pananagutan kung meron? Let's point this out before we try to disqualify him from anything. No?
Okay.
Okay, yun.
Well said.
Salamat.
Teka muna. Pahabol, kasama ba kayo doon sa council? Secretary Llamas? May binabanggit kasi yung konsehong magpapatakbo ng pamahalaan.
May bahid ako eh.
All right. Any message sa ating mga kasama? Would you care to give us your closing statements?
Well, very colorful yung guest mo ngayon. Ngayon lang kami nagkasama-sama sa isang lamesa. Siguro, alam naman ng mga nandito, yung mga dynamics namin, no? Pero, well, kung merong positive dito, ngayong anniversary ng EDSA, nakikita mo yung iba't ibang opinion, nakaupo, nagtatalo, no? Hindi pa naman nagpapatayan, no? Kaya kung merong ganong kaunting benepisyo yung EDSA, ito yun, na pwede kami magharapan dito at magdebate at magtalo-talo, magbigay ng ibang opinion, kahit iba-iba yung aming mga bahid.
Napakaganda nun. Mga kaibigan, I'd like to say thank you to our guests who took time out to be with us. Ang mga newsmakers sila, si Maluti Kia is indisposed. How I wish she could have joined us. But, you know, it's an exciting discussion we had, and we look forward to more discussions sa mga susunod na panahon. I'd like to thank Senator Kit, si Congressman Teddy, si Secretary Bert, at si Secretary Llamas. You know, this is one rare opportunity, and I hope we could duplicate this sa mga susunod pang pagkakataon. Maybe when you are already retired, by next year, or we don't know, we can have more coffee. Salamat sa tapatan sa Aristocrat. Salamat sa mga taga-Aristocrat. Have a nice day.